What if your personal transformation journey doesn't require dramatic change to be deeply real? Stay tuned for a beautiful reflection on awareness, self compassion, and learning to trust the quiet unfolding of your life. Welcome back to the Resilient MD, the podcast and YouTube channel where we have honest conversations about medicine, burnout, resilience, and how to care for others without losing ourselves in the process. I'm Dr. Anna McDowell, certified life coach, allergist, and your host. Today's episode is going to be a little different, slower, more reflective, more personal, because we are officially halfway through what I've been calling the butterfly year. And the truth is, I felt like we needed to pause for a moment, not to rush into the next episode, not to immediately optimize or improve or fix something, but simply to sit for a moment and look back at what has already shifted. Because transformation is strange that way. While you're inside it, it often feels invisible. Day by day, you may feel uncertain, emotional, unclear, slower than you expected. And then one day you realize you're no longer relating to yourself the same way you used to. And that is what today is about. Not dramatic reinvention, but the quiet internal shifts that happen when you finally begin listening to yourself honestly. Some of you may remember that earlier this year I shared a story about visiting a butterfly sanctuary in Belize years ago. And I remember walking through the sanctuary, seeing the larvae, the cocoons, the slow transformation process. And it struck me how much we romanticize the butterfly while completely overlooking the becoming. We admire the wings, but we rarely talk about the waiting, the restructuring, the stillness, the vulnerability of the transformation. From what I've seen, many women are conditioned to believe that transformation should look fast, decisive, productive, and externally impressive. But nature does not work that way. The caterpillar does not emerge from the cocoon overnight. There is preparation, there is dissolution, there is reorganization happening internally long before anything becomes visible externally. And I think this year has taught me to respect that process much more deeply, not only in nature, but in myself. When we began this butterfly year journey, we spent a lot of time talking about the cocoon phase. Many women initially resist this phase emotionally because slowing down can feel deeply uncomfortable for high achieving people. When your entire identity has been built around productivity, performance, reliability, capability, stillness can feel almost threatening. I understand that. Many women leave high pressure environments and immediately think, why can't I just relax? Why do I still feel restless? Why do I feel guilty slowing down? Does that sound familiar? But now, halfway through this year, I think more clearly than ever, the cocoon was never laziness. It was recalibration. It was the nervous system finally having enough space to begin processing what had been suppressed for years. Interestingly, many listeners are now realizing that rest is not always immediate, peaceful. Sometimes rest is where you finally hear everything you were too busy to notice before. I want to speak personally for a moment because one of the biggest changes I've noticed in myself this year is not necessarily external, it's internal. I think I've become slower emotionally, more honest with myself, less performative, less willing to override my own needs automatically. And perhaps most importantly, I no longer feel the same urgency to force certainty. That has been huge for me. For most of my life, I believed strength meant having answers, making quick decisions, pushing through discomfort, continuing no matter what. But this year has taught me something very different. Sometimes wisdom looks like pausing, listening, allowing things to unfold before forcing conclusions. And if I'm being real with you, that has been uncomfortable at times, but also deeply healing. I suspect many listeners may be noticing subtle changes too. Not necessarily dramatic life changes, but quieter shifts. Maybe you're noticing your exhaustion sooner, noticing where you overfunction, noticing how often you abandon your own needs, noticing how much invisible emotional labor you're carrying, noticing what environments drain you, noticing how often you say yes automatically. These may seem like small realizations, but they are not small because awareness changes the relationship you have with yourself. And once you begin seeing yourself more clearly, it becomes much harder to continue moving through life completely unconsciously. Not impossible, but harder because something inside you has awakened. To me, one of the most surprising things about transformation was realizing how much grief can coexist with growth. There can be grief for the years spent disconnected from myself, the pressure you normalized, the exhaustion you minimized, the version of yourself that survived by constantly overfunctioning. And at the same time, there can also be compassion because often that version of you was doing the best she could with the awareness she had at the time. I observe many women spending years criticizing themselves for coping patterns that originally developed as survival strategies, like people pleasing, overworking, overcaring, self silencing. These patterns were not evidence of weakness, they were adaptations. And in reality, part of healing is learning how to thank those old versions of ourselves without needing to remain trapped inside them forever. One of the biggest lessons this year has taught me is this: transformation does not need to happen violently in order to be real. And this is especially important because we live in a culture obsessed with dramatic reinvention. People want immediate clarity, immediate confidence, immediate certainty, immediate results. But sustainable transformation often happens much more quietly than that. It happens in pauses, in honest conversations, in boundaries, in noticing, in choosing differently, little by little. Not every transformation requires burning your entire life down. Sometimes transformation is simply no longer abandoning yourself automatically. And in my experience, that may be one of the most radical changes of all. Before we move on, I want to pause for a moment. I'm curious, have you been feeling exhausted, discouraged, or frustrated and not quite sure why? Are you quietly wondering if this is just how life in medicine has to be? Well, I see you. You don't have to give up on yourself or your dreams. And the good news is that you don't have to figure it all out alone. I built a 6-week one-on-one coaching program designed to help women physicians gently remove the barriers keeping them stuck and rediscover clarity, balance, and purpose. It is called the Resilient MD, just like the podcast and YouTube channel. If you are ready, you can begin today. Schedule your free clarity call. The link is in the show's notes. Earlier this year, the butterfly metaphor felt inspiring to me. Now it feels meaningful in a deeper way because I understand now that transformation is not about becoming someone entirely different. It's about becoming more fully yourself. And the cocoon phase was never about hiding, it was about restructuring quietly, internally, patiently. The butterfly does not force its wings open before they are ready. And I hope many women are learning that forcing clarity, forcing healing, forcing decisions, or forcing identity before readiness often creates more suffering. Wings strengthen gradually. And to be fair, I think many of us are still strengthening. As we move into the next quarter of this butterfly year, I can feel the emotional shift beginning. Because once awareness deepens long enough, another question naturally begins emerging. Am I allowed to honor what I now know? Am I allowed to stop overcaring, to disappoint expectations, to want something different, to create a softer life, to protect my peace? And this next season is going to explore that very gently. Not through rebellion, not through force, but through permission. Permission to exist more honestly inside your own life. Halfway through this butterfly year, I don't think the goal is perfection. And quite frankly, I don't think the goal is ever perfection like I used to. I don't think the goal is having everything figured out. I think the goal is something much quieter, to become more truthful, more compassionate toward yourself, more connected to your inner voice, less willing to abandon yourself automatically. And truthfully, that is already a profound transformation, even if nobody else can fully see it yet. If you feel like you're changing slowly, uncertainly, imperfectly, I want you to know something. That does not mean transformation is not happening. Some of the deepest changes happen quietly, below the surface, without performance, without urgency, just like the butterfly. And perhaps halfway through this year, the greatest gift is realizing you do not need to force your wings to grow. You only need to keep listening honestly enough to allow them to. My wings grow when I listen. If this conversation spoke to you, consider sending it to a fellow physician or a friend that is not in medicine. Next week, we start a new season on this journey, the season of permission. It will be epic. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of the show. And if today's episode resonated with you, I created something to support you even further. It's called the People Pleasing in Medicine Reflection Guide. A thoughtful resource for women physicians, actually is for everybody who are tired of always putting themselves last. You can grab it through the link below. Let's grow this community together. If this episode served you, please take just a moment to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or your favorite platform and like this video on YouTube. It's one of the best ways to help more women hear this message. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating on this journey and growing alongside me. And thank you for allowing the space to become one where transformation can unfold gently, honestly, and humanly. I'm Dr. Anna McDowell, a resilient MD just like you. I'll see you next week.